I want to take a look in this video at getting some practice with solving these simple equations. So copy these 3 questions down, then pause the video and work out the answer and solve for x in each of these problems. And once you have an answer for each, then resume the video and watch the solution to each one of these problems. Well, in the first question here, we have 3x equals 15. This really means 3 times what number is equal to 15? And it's okay to do this by inspection and just say, hey, well, I know that 3 times 4 is 12, so 3 times 5 is 15, so the answer must be 15. And that's fine. But mathematically here, when we solve these equations, remember, this left-hand side really says 3 times x. So in order to get rid of the 3 and get the x all by itself, we have to do the opposite operation. So we then divide by 3. And if we divide by 3, that gets us the x all by itself. The other rule of equations is that whatever you do to the left side of the equation, you must also do to the right side. And so we divided the left-hand side of the equation by 3. We must divide the right-hand side of the equation by 3 as well. And now we have x is equal to 15 divided by 3, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. We could also then plug 5 back in here, and we can just do this by mental math because we can see that 3 times 5 is definitely equal to 15. So whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. Now, here we have one that's a little bit more complicated. We have 2x minus 5 is equal to 13. So we're going to have to get rid of the negative 5 first and then get rid of the 2. Remember, we always do our addition subtraction first and then our multiplication division. Sort of opposite of BEDMAS when you're solving equations. So the sign directly in front of the 5 is a minus. It says minus 5. In order to get rid of a minus 5, we have to add 5. And so we add 5 to both sides of this equation. And now, in mathematics, usually we don't write now 2x minus 5 plus 5 is equal to 13 plus 5. Usually we don't write this part, because we know that minus 5 plus 5 is going to equal 0. If you feel comfortable writing it, that's fine. If you wanted to jump right to this step at this point and say, hey, I know plus 5 minus 5 is going to be equal to 0, so I could write, instead of this line, I could just go ahead and write 2x is equal to 13 plus 5. And now I can simplify my right-hand side. 13 plus 5 is 18. And now once again, the left-hand side of this equation says 2 times x. So to get rid of the 2, I do the opposite operation. The operation is times, so to get rid of it, I'm going to divide. And I divide both sides of the equation. And my 2's cancel. And I get x is equal to 18 over 2, or x is equal to 9. And this is not as easy to see, but we have 2x minus 5 is equal to 13. And I said that x was equal to 9. So I can put 2 times 9 in here and see what I get. And 2 times 9 is 18. And 18 minus 5 is 13. So this is correct. And getting a little bit harder still now, this third question. Well, now we have the x's in 2 spots and the numbers in 2 spots, so we want to get the x's to one side and the numbers to the other side. A little trick here is look and see which side x is larger. In order to not make errors with negatives and so on, it's easier to move the x's to the side where there are more x's to begin with. And you can see here we've got 6 x's on the right-hand side and only 4 x's on the, we've got 6 x's on the right-hand side and only 4 x's on the left-hand side. So I'm actually going to put my numbers on the left side for this one, and I'm going to put my x's on the right. It doesn't matter which way you solve it. Again, you can read an equation forwards or backwards. X equals 2 is exactly the same as saying 2 equals x. So the first thing I'm going to do now, I know I'm going to get my numbers on the left. So I've made that decision. In order to get my numbers on the left, I always look after my addition subtraction first when I solve equations. So I got to get rid of this -6 and move it to the left side. I get rid of a -6 by performing the opposite operation, and opposite of -6 is +6. So I add 6 to both sides of this equation. And what I did just at the tail end of the last question, you see this part is always going to result in 0. So I'm not even going to write it on the right-hand side anymore, or the left side, wherever it appears. But now my left-hand side, I have +6 plus, remember when there's no sign in front, it's a plus, +6 plus 2 plus 4x is equal to 6x. And then I had -6 plus 6, which again, I'm not going to write on the next line, that's equal to 0. And now I can clean up this left side by combining my numbers. 6 plus 2 is 8. So I get 8 plus 4x is equal to 6x. And now I have to get all the x's on one side. In order to get all the x's on one side, I've decided the right-hand side is where my x's will be, remember, because I had more x's there to begin with. So I need to get rid of that 4x. I get rid of the plus 4x by subtracting 4x. And I must subtract 4x from both sides. And again, plus 4x minus 4x will always give me 0 whenever I'm moving, right? Just like plus 6 and minus 6 gave me 0 up here. So the only thing left on the left hand, the only thing remaining on the left-hand side of the equation is 8. And now on the right-hand side, I have 6x minus 4x. Well, if I have 6x minus 4x, that's the same as 2x. And so I have 8 is equal to 2x. And in order to get the x all by itself, this says 2 times x, so I divide by 2 and divide by 2. And my 2's cancel, and I'm left with 8 over 2 is 4. 4 is equal to x. And again, if you have 4 equals x, or you read it this way and you have x equals 4, these two statements are exactly the same. So when you did this problem, if you moved all your x's to the left and all of your numbers to the right, once you divided, you still would have got the same answer. The only reason why I usually move the x's to the side with the larger number in front of the x is to avoid difficulty with negatives. So that gives you some practice with solving simple equations.